Hello, and welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. I am so glad you're joining us. My name is Keiko Munechika, and as a women's leadership coach and a lifelong sufferer of imposter syndrome, this topic is really important to me. I have heard so many imposter syndrome stories from the women around me. The crippling self-doubt, the feelings of being a fraud, the fear of speaking up, the disconnect from others. I've also heard the inspiring ways in which women have managed these feelings, the ways in which they've stood up to self-doubt, sought out support, and come through on the other side. I started this podcast because I want to share these stories with you. Too many of us suffer in silence. We feel alone and ashamed of our feelings, which makes them even more powerful. I wanted to create a space where women could share their experiences and release the burden of what we often carry around as a deep, dark secret. I also wanted a place where everyone could hear from others and recognize, hey, I'm not alone. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, and there are steps that I can take to rise above it. I hope that as you listen, you'll find support and comfort in what you hear. And if you're feeling brave and motivated to do so, I hope you'll someday share your story with us. So welcome, Keiko. I'm very excited to be having this conversation with you today. Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, Kim, likewise, I'm excited to be here. So my name is Keiko Munechika. So my professional background is I'm a chemist, and I got my Ph.D. from University from Washington. I did a postdoc on a couple different national labs. And I joined a company in Silicon Valley to manage an R&D team. And last year, I co-founded a company called High RI Optics, and I serve as a CEO at the moment. And I also co-founder of Daisuki-Coaching to support professional as well as personal goals of men and women, women and men, and particularly in the technology, science, and medicine field, because that's my people, and that's my one paragraph background professionally, mostly.
Thank you. You must be very busy with both of those endeavors.
Busy, but it just makes me alive to do things. These are my passions, so I'm very happy.
That's great. And so, as you know, we're going to be talking today about imposter syndrome. And I'm curious, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? What comes up for you when you hear that term, and how, if at all, has it affected you as you've been advancing your career and venturing out in these new directions?
Imposter syndrome, to me, that immediately comes up to me is self-doubt, and that I have been doing this for a long time. I've had so many rough spots in my career because of my imposter syndrome. And you might think that, she got an advanced degree, she's, R&D manager and doing her own company. But that's not what I see for myself. I have always been, am I good enough? Other people are doing more than I have. Those thoughts and just really, really made me, doubt my ability. And also, it just really sucked. Sometimes just the process of, sometimes you hear about this enjoying the process, but I never felt like I am enjoying the process. I'm just always pushing something so I can go further.
Yeah, you are describing some pretty classic traits as it relates to imposter syndrome, that sense of never being enough, doing enough, right? Comparing ourselves to others and not feeling like we measure up. The interesting thing about imposter syndrome is that it really is most prevalent among high achievers. And I would certainly put you in that category, given where you are right now. You're leading two different businesses. You do have an advanced degree, so you've challenged yourself in your education. It sounds funny when we talk about imposter syndrome in the context of high achievers, because they're the people that we least expect to have self-doubt. But I think what's also true is that the high achievers are the ones who are constantly pushing themselves and stretching their comfort zones and challenging themselves. And so it's natural, when you think about it that way, that there would be more self-doubt when you are continuing to grow.
Yeah. And then when you just said, oh, you're a high achiever, and then, somewhere in my mind, it pops up, not really already. It's like, no, there's other people who has done better. Those thoughts are always in my background somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that we as women struggle with too, is that we don't often see ourselves as special. We look around and we admire so many other people around us, and we think, wow, look at what she's done, look at what he's done, but we don't see that in ourselves. Other people likely see that in us and are probably comparing themselves to us and feeling like they don't measure up, but we don't see that when we look at our own experience.
Right. And I think part of the reason is that we are in it, and it just, when we are inside of it, we don't see it from the outside.
Exactly. You're right. And is there any specific example that you can think of where you really felt like imposter syndrome came up for you, got in your way, just something that really characterizes your experience with imposter syndrome?
When I finished my advanced degree and postdoc, and I started took a role as a manager to manage a group of about 4 people. And at that time, I had no experience in management. And over that next 2-3 years, I felt every day the imposter syndrome was just, squeezing myself out. It was a very difficult time for me. Every day, some new thing come up. My immediate response was, "Oh, I've never done this before. I'm not experienced enough. What do I know? I don't know these technical details enough to, oh my God, how can I manage these people and bring the funds for salary and research?" It's not a one specific event, but it took me 3 years to get through that. I'll call it kind of like a really painful experience of I almost felt like every day I was feeling some sort of an imposter syndrome.
And it makes sense, because it takes a while for you to go through that transition and reach a place where you're feeling like things have stabilized and you know what you're doing, right? So it's really painful, like you said, the journey to get there, but eventually we do, because our lives are full of these transition points.
Right.
Are often, when we're in that moment, this feels so different and so overwhelming. But if we look back, we realize every new stage, everything that we learned was uncomfortable, scary at some point, and we got through it, right? So I think sometimes it's helpful just to keep that bigger picture perspective.
Right. And at that time, I didn't have it. I just knew that I had to go through it for my growth. But every day, anything comes up, it was painful for sure.
And let's talk a little bit more about that, because when you just said that about, you knew you had to go through it for your growth.
Right.
What's interesting about this is you didn't let that self-doubt stop you, right? You endured that pain for an extended period of time. What was it that motivated you to keep pushing through it, and how were you addressing those feelings of self-doubt along the way?
I was I knew that I had to do it because I look at it as a very unique opportunity for me. That it was not a very traditional route for someone who finished school and other trainings uh, to be able to get an opportunity to manage a group, and it has the freedom to do a lot of freedom in terms of management, the project direction, and I just had in my gut that this is a unique opportunity for me that I wouldn't necessarily be able to get at other traditional company experience. So that was the only thing that motivated me. And then all of a sudden, I was responsible for funding my R&D group, which meant that people depended on me to bring in the salary, including myself. So I almost in a way that I didn't have a way back, and I knew if I don't take this opportunity, I guess the third thing is that I didn't want to fail myself. I didn't want to quit. That was three motivation. That the one, I knew this was a very unique opportunity. The second one was other people relied on me. The third thing was I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to quit. So these combination of the three got me through this really painful experience.
And that's one of the themes that I've been picking up on from these conversations that I've been having, is that often it's the power of the goal, whether like you're saying, the opportunity or the not wanting to let yourself or others down, outweighing the pain of experiencing these challenges that keeps you fighting through it.
Yeah, and those three things I mentioned, just not taking advantage of these opportunities and letting other and myself down, was more painful in a way than the going through this pain of imposter syndrome. And of course, there are some, enjoyment of doing my actual work. So that also kept me going.
When you were going through the pain, were you consciously able to recognize it and intervene in any way? Did you have specific strategies or resources that you turned to help manage some of that?
It's to reduce the pain. Like I had some other like mentors that helped me, and my boss, although he wasn't particularly in the too involved with me every in the day to day, but he gives me the words of encouragement, and that assured me that it was less painful than just having no other support. But at the same time, I knew I had to go through it. I just had to go through it. So, and looking back, that, oh man, I could have taken it easy a little bit more.
That's the beauty of hindsight, right? So we can look back and see, actually, it didn't need to be as hard as I made it, right?
Yeah. And having the support of your close friend, family, significant others, and that definitely eased the pain a little bit. But I knew it comes from me. I just knew it comes from my inside, and I had to go through it and just figure things out one by one.
Yeah, it sounds like that's kind of your hardwiring, is to recognize that it's part of the process and to just get through it.
Yeah, and I think it also gives me some sort of a pleasure to go through it, although it's painful. But it's a paradox of me getting pleasure out of this, going through this experience, this painful experience. So I think in a way that maybe I'm wired to, maybe some other women is also the same. That having to go through that experience is also I don't know. I know that it is a growth for me, and growing gives me pleasure.
That is something I've heard too, is that sense of accomplishment that comes from knowing that you have pushed yourself, challenged yourself, grown, as you've said, is really powerful. I think when things come really easy to us, we don't appreciate them as much. There isn't that same sense of
right
having grown, like you said.
You're right.
How would you say your experience with imposter syndrome has changed over time? Is this something that you actively deal with today? Is it something that ebbs and flows?
I definitely deal with it, but as I go through my this is one of the reasons why I do coaching, is that the self-development part that also helps me to help other women and men in this process. And it's not as much as before. I know how to kind of put a pause to not go all the way spiral down, that I am going crazy in my head. As I get older, and as I do more self-discovery and self-development books, and hearing other women, okay, I go through these experiences, then I can step back when I start going crazy in my head. With the imposter syndrome, I can put a pause on it and see and take a breathe, and okay, I'm just going crazy in my head, and it's not doing me anything good. So let's step back. Now I can say that.
I think that's an interesting point too, because since you and I are both coaches, we probably have similar experiences in that regard. I have struggled with imposter syndrome on and off throughout my life. And I think helping other women manage imposter syndrome has been the most effective way to help myself manage my own feelings of imposter syndrome. I think the more I understand this experience, where it comes from, how to intervene, the resources that are available, it has definitely made me feel more in control of this.
Right. I think you put it perfectly, that when I'm speaking to other women and I can spot the signs so easily, that's because I do it to myself. And just being able to look at it in others and being able to help them through that process, I can also look at myself from a little bit further away, bird's eye view, and put a pause more constructively than before. I'm just in it and swimming with it.
Exactly. And that's truly why I wanted to have this conversation in the first place, is that I think when we are in that situation, we're so emotionally involved. It's hard to have perspective, and it's easy to feel alone, like the only person who's feeling this way. When in actuality, we look around and people are going through this all around us. We just don't talk about it.
Right.
So, just having the ability to say it out loud, I think, often diffuses the power of the feelings as well.
Right. Absolutely.
If I like to ask this question of everybody, if imposter syndrome were not an issue for you, and you had 100% confidence 100% of the time, what would be different for you? Is there anything that you would or would not do?
I think that I want to have that imposter syndrome a little bit in the manageable quantities. The imposter syndrome definitely had a gift to it. And the gift were, number one, I really worked hard, and I was more careful and preparations, and maybe I was not too confident, and that I didn't really pay attention to things. So there are some gifts to that imposter syndrome, although it's really annoying sometimes. So I consider like imposter syndrome is as it's not a best friend that I want to be around all the time, but I want it's a friend that I want to keep around. And so it's, I still want to have that fear of doing something new, because that really I know that's for me that it's that point that I need to stretch myself a little bit more to go to the next level or yeah.
I love that. And I actually wrote a blog post not that long ago about the gifts of imposter syndrome for in the same way that you're describing, which is, imagine if we were in a state where everything came perfectly easily and naturally to us. How challenged would we feel? How interesting would life be if we weren't a little bit uncomfortable, right? I think it's a great gauge, especially if we are motivated by achievement, to assess whether we are ready for a new challenge. If we're not feeling imposter syndrome, and our tendency is to feel it when we are outside of our comfort zone. If we're feeling a little too comfortable, then maybe it's a signal that it's time for a new challenge. And if we are feeling imposter syndrome and we are able to be conscious and rational in how we process that experience, we can look at it and say to ourselves, congratulations, right? The reason we're feeling this way is because we took a risk, because we challenged ourselves, because we stepped outside of that comfort zone. So I love what you're saying, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's not the kind of thing that we want to nurture as a best friend, as you said, but it's a good thing to have there just to keep us growing.
Right. Yeah. And then I think it took me years to come to that, I don't know, be at peace with this paradox of good to have it, but you don't want it all the time.
Exactly. So what motivated you to want to tell your story today? What is it that you hope people who are listening will take away from your story?
I think my number one was just to share the story that no matter what you think this person's achievement, for myself, that everybody experiences, and imposter syndrome is actually, there's really a gift to it, and to help us keep moving forward, and with that sense of pride, a sense of confidence that comes after going through this imposter syndrome, it's really a gift to our lives. And I think it's a great thing that I was so excited to hear that you're doing this, because we always talk about imposter syndrome, but we understand it intellectually, but when you really live through it and hear others' story, then you see that, okay, other people are having it. So it's just, I think it's a great opportunity for me to share my own story, as well as to hear other people's story.
Thank you so much. And I love what you said too about it when you were first talking about the experience that you've had of, you on the surface, or this is my interpretation anyway, on the outside look like somebody who's a high achiever, but you've struggled with a lot of these feelings yourself. And so the tendency I think that we all have is to look at high achievers, people who have been successful, and assume that it was easy for them, that they have it all figured out, and that we are somehow flawed. We haven't gotten there yet. And in reality, we simply don't know what somebody's internal struggle has been, what challenges they have faced in getting to where they are. And so sharing these stories really gives us an inside look and the ability to recognize that very few people get to where they're going without any pain, without any self-doubt. I think it's far more often that we do have these struggles, and the more that we can shed light on them, the more that we can comfort other people in knowing you're
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your taking the time to share your story with us, willing to be vulnerable for a bit with the world. And I certainly have taken a lot away from this conversation. I'm sure others have as well. So thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with other women who can benefit from this conversation. Before we go, I want to share some additional resources with you. If you struggle with imposter syndrome and you want to manage it more effectively, I invite you to join my free Imposter Syndrome online challenge. Every day for 7 days, you'll get an email with self-reflection questions and exercises to help you better understand your own experience with imposter syndrome and how to navigate it more effectively. To join the free challenge, visit executivekareersuccess.com/imposter-syndrome-challenge. When you sign up, you'll immediately receive your first message. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of women who engage in candid conversations that generally aren't happening elsewhere, I invite you to join my Leading Women discussion group. On the first and third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern, we meet virtually over Zoom to talk about questions or challenges related to career management, leadership development, and any other relevant topics such as imposter syndrome and confidence. It's always a great discussion with a great group of women. If you want to check it out, you're welcome to be my guest on a future call. Just reach out to me at kim@executivekareersuccess.com and I will share the call details with you. And if you want to join my newsletter to receive tips, insights, and updates, text Leading Women, all one word, to 66866. Finally, consider telling us your story. Contact me to learn more about how you can be a guest on the Impostor Syndrome Files. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.